Hello and happy New Year's Eve. As you can see, my base is almost done, so I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys what I'm gonna do for the eyes. I'm going to use the Mario Ethereal Eyes Moonlight palette because I think it's perfect for this time. I'm gonna start by going in with this shade right here as the transition shade. I'm taking the JH34 brush from Morphe and just putting that in the crease and along the outer edge of the eye. I'm going to use the same brush to then take this gray shade to deepen up the outer corner. This shade is just going to act as a buffer before I go in with the dark blue to make sure that everything blends seamlessly. As you can see, I added a little bit of translucent powder up on each side just to keep the shape of the eyeshadow somewhat similar on both sides. I like to go in after every few steps with either a clean brush or a brush with a little bit of a lighter shade just to blend out the edges so that before moving on to every color, it's blended nice and seamlessly, because it's a lot harder to blend once you have a lot of color on there rather than going little by little. Then I'm going to use this Sephora collection brush because it has a really pointed end, and I'm going to use the dark blue shade to deepen up the outer corner even more. I also like to just tap these shades into place before I go and blend them out so that I don't have a lot of fallout. I don't find that this palette has too much fallout either way, but it just helps ensure that everything stays where it's supposed to. I'm again going to go in with this same brush that has nothing on it and really buff out the edges now that this is laid down. Now that everything is laid down on the top lid, I'm going to go through with these three shades again and do the same thing on my bottom lash line and just buff out this powder here so that we can define the shape with the under eyes. By having that translucent powder there, it allows us to connect the lower lash line with this line and keep it very diffused and soft. I'm again going to be very careful with this dark blue shade and keep it just on the outer third of the eye because it is so dark and it's a blue shade. It can make you look kind of lifeless. So by keeping it on the outer corner, we're keeping the inside of the eyes very bright and to keep the face looking alive. Now that all of that is buffed out, I'm going to take the JH37 brush from Morphe, and you can use any like pale color for this. I'm using the painted palette, the shade Sugar, and I'm going to go up here in the inner corner and blend it out to make sure again that we're just keeping the inside of the eye very bright. And this just helps diffuse all the colors because it is a much lighter shade. And I'm also going to take more of it and just blend it up on the edges so that it blends into my skin. Now that that's all done, you can see there's a really nice gradient on both eyes that go from the skin tone into the darkest blue. Now I'm going to go back to the Mario palette and use this shade. I didn't use this one because it has a tiny bit of shimmer in it to do the last step, but you can use whatever you have. I am going to take this shade and put it all over the lid. Because these glitters are more like toppers, when I have dark shades, I like to go in with something like this to buff out these edges. So I'm going to use the Morphe A29 brush, which is just a flat shader brush, and some of that first color, and just pat that on the lid. And this will allow me to make a little bit of a shape for my glitter to go without it being a harsh line. Okay, we're finally onto the glitters, so I'm going to use this white glitter. It has the most beautiful reflex in it. I like to go in with it with my finger first and just swirl around and then tap it lightly, and it has the prettiest blue reflex in it. And then I do that to both eyes, and then I just go in with a brush to clean up the edges. I'm going to go ahead and use the JH41 brush with that same shade and just create a little bit of shape with it. It is a glitter, so I'm not going to have a really defined shape, but this just helps get the color everywhere that my finger couldn't. You can skip this next step depending on the look you're going for, but I like to take a little bit of that color on the side of my brush and run it right on the inner half of my lower lash line. Especially because it's New Year's Eve, I don't mind if the glitter falls. I like a little bit of glitter fallout. But this will cause you to have fallout kind of here. It's a glitter, and that's just what's going to happen if you do it after your base. With that said, I do find with these glitters, if I only use my finger and I don't go in with a brush, I have very little fallout and they're very easy to control, so just be aware when you're using them. I'm going to go back into my painted palette and use the first shade called Finnegan as my inner corner highlight, and then I like to use my face highlighter on top of this once I finish my face, which just adds a little bit more because I love a really bright sparkly inner corner. And by taking this up a little bit into the same line that we brought the glitter, it opens the eyes a bit more and makes your lids look a little bigger. I went ahead and did a little tiny eyeshadow wing with the A19 brush and the black in the Mario palette. So I'm gonna go finish up the rest of my face, add mascara, and then I'll be back to show you the rest. I just shut off the lights so that you can see everything a little bit better. I added mascara and these press-on eyelashes. They look a mess under my eyelash and no glue. It's super easy. I think the eyes turned out really pretty, especially with more of a nude lip. So, thank you for following along and Happy New Year.